Okay, everybody, in this episode, you're going to hear some great discussions. We had this discussion with Dr. Andrew and Matt Brown from Dental Unfiltered, and we thought it was good enough to repost. We talk about the struggles of entrepreneurship. We talked about the unrealistic expectations of what social media does, and I think you'll really enjoy the conversation. Let's go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Dental Unfiltered. I'm Matt Brown. I'm here with my normal co-host, Andrew Vallo. And we have two awesome guests today. We have Craig Spodak and Peter from Bulletproof, and they're longtime OG podcasters in dentistry and really awesome big names. And I want to give a chance for them to intro themselves and have Andrew talk a little bit, and then we'll get right into the subject we're talking about today. We're talking about the grind of the hustle and expectations of what's real for you and kind of the dark times, and is the juice really worth the squeeze? So Dr. Spodak, I hear your name all the time in dentistry. Basically, when it comes to extreme success, I ask some questions. Everyone always brings up Dr. Spodak. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
I think you need to find some more successful friends first off, because if I've reached the pinnacle of your group,
You're the name I hear all the time.
no, you got to go into bigger circles. But thank you. Listen, first of all, thank you for that compliment, and that's awesome. And what I look at as success is getting what you want and then wanting what you get. So yes, if that's the measure of success, I'm it. There are people that make a lot more money and have a lot different things, but I like what I got, and I was very intentional about creating what I got. But it was a grind, and I'm happy we're talking about this today, because if you're listening to a podcast like this, you're probably thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur and that you're going to go and scale and grow this practice. And I think it's a very worthy topic, because the sexy topic is how do you hustle and get ahead. And the unsexy truth is that, like we were talking before we hit record, there's many practices out there that have, 3 locations, but it's one provider. So practice 1's paying for practice 2 and 3, and that's not fun. So I'm happy that we're going to add a counterpoint to the larger narrative that we hear all the time of like, hey, dentist is CEO.
Craig, can you give us a quick background just of your practice, like what you've done for anyone that doesn't know?
So I worked with my dad when I got out of school. My dad had a kind of very simple rundown, practice. It wasn't really doing too much. My mom worked the front desk. She had an appointment book, and every time someone wanted to make a new appointment, she had to erase it in pencil. And by the time 2 or 3 appointments had been changed, there was a hole through the paper. So there was no ability to really scale. And I always had this dream to be an entrepreneur and grow something larger. And I went off and tried to build this building, and 12 banks, as the story goes, rejected me, and they told me they couldn't give me the money. And I finally convinced the bank to loan me the money, almost went broke. And through just sheer grit and determination and a healthy dose of stupidity, I made it all work. I got lucky, and I made it work. Now we have a 13,000 square foot, soon to be 16,000 square foot, 18 ops, soon to be 23 op facility here in Delray Beach, Florida. And I'm now kind of like an advisory role in my practice. We still own it, but I'm just kind of an advisor at this point. So I wanted to build something that was autonomous, that ran without me. And that's what I've done.
Awesome. Peter, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and kind of how you ended up here?
Craig and I have different models, and this is what makes Bulletproof kind of unique from a podcast, I guess you could say. Right. So like I have multiple locations. So I have 8 locations, 4 brands. And one of my goals and kind of my come up was owning the real estate. So I own a bunch of real estate, all the locations, all the real estate with that. And when Craig and I found each other, really, we got in kind of to similar positions in the dental world, if you will, but through different means, meaning you just heard that of his, the most iconic practice I know of and he built to one location, right? But I was multi-location, multi-real estate, multi-brand, all fee for service kind of thing. So he and I kind of speak from different sides of the thing, but very similarly. Also, Craig is very in his heart and is very, I call him the dental whisperer. He's very good at interpreting what people want, even though people think they say this is what I want. They copy and paste this narrative, I think, that runs in dentistry, which they think that private equity wants, for example. And I come at it from a different one. I'm a very tactical, very behind the scenes, very data driven kind of leader, if you will. So that's how he and I kind of complement each other, especially kind of from stage and our summits and our mastermind.
So thank you guys both for being here. So we're going to tackle a really cool subject today. And I kind of want to kick it off. We're talking about, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? A really good thing they both said is, do you really want this? And I think there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet, from artwork to practices to the word EBITDA being overthrown around, where there's ads you see every day of like, do 40 arches a month, or there's ads that they say, work 3 days a week and make X amount of dollars in collections and have your EBITDA here. And I think a lot of it I would call like success porn, or like kind of like it kind of creates an expectation that as a dentist, if I'm not doing this, I'm not making it. And I think it's not really right for everybody. Like, I don't think everyone should be a practice owner. A lot of people should be associates, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. So, leading into that, these expectations are set on dentists. And I feel like they really feel like this is what I have to live up to. And what is your perception of what reality is for these individuals? Like, how should they be looking at this stuff and kind of self-analyzing? Like, where should I really be?
I'll jump into this. I think there's a lot of horrible narratives going on in dentistry. And I think these, this full arch Friday kind of shit and this, like, look at me, and you see people's greatest hits. Like, you want to feel bad about yourself, get online and look at people's social media, because all they're trying to do is posture for something. And I think it's bad. Like, actually, there's one of the most famous influencers I saw. He was telling everybody, like, I don't even have a budget. I don't even look at my numbers. I don't even do stuff like that. And I'm like, this is horrible, horrible advice for our industry, right? It's a unicorn giving advice to the masses of like how you should run a quote unquote business. So I don't know. Maybe I'm getting cynical in my old age, but I don't like the greatest hits on social media. I don't like, the arch, do these arches and do all these things and look at me, because we honestly see a lot behind, as being dentists, Craig's been a dentist, 25 years and me 23. You get to see the people who are posturing, and then you get to see behind the veil. And it is a house of cards. Typically, mostly it is a house of cards. The people who are badasses in dentistry are operating in stealth, in silence. And these are the ones that have the EBITDA that everyone speaks of. It's not the ones that are peacocking on Instagram. I promise you.
I think it's Instagram in general, though, guys. Dentistry aside, it's the vacations, it's the new car, or whatever. We only see the best sides of people on social media. And I think it rings true in dentistry.
Comparison's the thief of joy, right?
I've ran into a couple of these coaches at events, and they have come to us for marketing, and they turn on their DI. And the story is never what's being said on stage. And like, House of Cards is the right example.
I would love to go back and just talk about, well, number one, for the young dentist that's listening to this, it feels like, hey, why am I not getting ahead? Why is everybody kicking ass and I'm not? I suffered so much unnecessarily in that comparison. Like, if I could just be like Dr. So-and-so, why is it so easy for Dr. So-and-so? And then you get enough trips around the sun and you're like, holy shit, Dr. So-and-so's, it's a bunch of bullshit. And Dr. So-and-so went out of business, or Dr. So-and-so is actually miserable. So if I could give advice to my younger self, which is also to you, the listener, don't judge yourself. Create exactly what you want. Dentistry is beautiful in that you can create exactly what you want. Just spend some time figuring out what you want. And regarding what Pete said, there's that famous influencer dentist that says, hey, I don't operate with a budget. I don't care about a budget. I never think about a budget. That person doesn't run a business. Sales solve everything. So if you're an amazing dentist, if you're an iconic dentist and you can just work an extra day and produce an extra $1 million for the practice, then yeah, you don't need to worry about a budget, because you'll just come in and sweep in and fix it. But for most of us mere mortals, if the goal is to become a self-sustaining business where you don't have to be strapped to the chair, if that's your desire or your vision, you must think about numbers. I got myself in a lot of trouble with that cavalier thinking. I had an $8 million top line and I was running a non-for-profit. I literally had, I was working my tail off, $2 million with my own hands, $8 million top line, and like maybe 100,000 in EBITDA. That sucks. That is the worst thing ever, where you're working really hard and your associates are on $600, $700, $800 per day guarantee, or just twiddling their thumbs. You're actually working for them. So I just think it's important to decipher what you want.
I'm going to look at this from the other side as well. And I want to point out, as a young dentist, if you're looking at people that are doing great things, it's all about perspective as well. So I think, you could get beaten down by that, but you could also use it as inspiration. So, and fortunately for me, I think that's what I did. So I graduated dental school 2016. I was working in public health for the first couple of years. So I was just doing, yanking a bunch of teeth. I was doing a bunch of molar endo. There was no specialists in town. But I wasn't doing high-end dentistry. I wasn't doing cosmetics. I wasn't doing Invisalign. I wasn't really learning anything about running a practice. And so what I did is I had an hour and 20-minute drive each way into middle of nowhere, Ohio, And I was listening to podcasts. So I was listening to Mark Costas on Dentalpreneur, and I was listening to Peter and Craig on Bulletproof. And I heard some of the amazing things that they were doing. And rather than sit there and think like, how could I ever do this? Or I'm just a public health dentist. Like, what am I doing with my life? I instead was thinking like, this is incredible. How can I learn from the people that have already done it? So I think it can be very impactful if you, and fortunately I got lucky. Like maybe I followed the right people, but if you do find the right people and you really, have the right mindset about it, and you seek that as inspiration rather than, greed or envy or whatever it is, I think it can lead to some really great things. And we all took totally different paths. I mean, some things were similar. I think we all struggled with things like, financing and finding the funding, to make it happen. Peter did the group, but he owns all the real estate. I did a group. I don't own any real estate. So I've got 10 practices. They're all leases. And then Craig did his, mega practice that they're even building again. So I guess, once again, guys, there's no one way to success, but if you can find people that have already done the things that you want to do and you can follow in their footsteps, it can put you on a really good path.
Well said.
At some point, you guys were young dentists, right? And you guys were in the mix of the grind and life sucked, right? And then at some point, you had an epiphany. There was like, oh, it doesn't have to be this way. And everything in life worth doing is hard, right? Like everything is. Like there's for the dentist speaking or listening, there is no easy in success. It just isn't there. I spent 7 years in special operations for our government, and I went to selection process where there was 44 of us and 11 of us got selected. And there was a point in that selection process where I was like, oh, I'm going to make it. Like I had an epiphany. So what point in both your careers did you guys have this turning point of going from frustrated younger dentists or frustrated inexperienced dentists to transforming into entrepreneur and really getting a hold of with the direction you were going and feeling good about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, and I've been asked this many times, and, you search for that one like inflection point, Matt, and I don't believe there's one. I think it's a culmination of a number of realizations. I think my first one was, honestly, I used to have a hobby. I used to race motocross as a dentist, and it was not very congruent with being a dentist. And of course, I had a pretty bad accident, broke my collarbone, had to be out, but couldn't be out, meaning collarbone was in two places, couldn't be out because when I didn't have any money, right? This is early in my career. And it was like, hey, you need to take 6 to 8 weeks off. I was like, I can't do that. Can't do that. So like working through the pain of like holding your arm up like that with a broken clavicle for 8 weeks it's a reminder that I had a job. I had a job. And if I wasn't there, then nothing was going to happen, right? Bills were not being paid. So that was the inflection point number one, where it was like, okay, this has to scale in order for me to have a business. I've been fooling myself that I had a business. I don't have a business because I almost put myself, through bankruptcy and just being out 8 weeks.
I'm actually thinking and this is going to sound kind of corny, but I'm going to credit Pete with a lot of this. Pete was like a sounding board and a mirror for me. I had Pete used a very interesting word. I had convinced myself that I had a business. I had convinced myself that I was doing exactly what I wanted. So even when it was that inflection point when I did that $8 million top line and was running a non-for-profit, Pete was Pete was my friend. He was really kind of deciphering it all down for me, and it made me feel like this is not sustainable. Because as a young dentist, I thought, okay, I do $1 million a year, I make 200 grand. I do 2 million, I make 400, and so on and so forth. The math just kind of scales itself. Like, don't worry about budget. And then I found myself at 8 million with nothing. And I don't want to fly that close to the sun. So I said, okay, what do I have to do here? And I stopped doing the day-to-day dentistry and started focusing on my team and grew everybody else because I was managing the business as an afterthought. I was really hustling with my dentistry. And then at 5 o'clock, when I'm completely frazzled, I would add like maybe 10 minutes working on the business where I'm actually growing people. When I hear the word working on the business, I'm not talking about doing payroll. I'm talking about growing your team. That's what working on the business is. Our business in dentistry is people. So if you can grow your people, you can grow your business. But anything other than that is a waste of my time. So I just, getting my butt kicked. And it's just so many layers of ass kicking I've gone through. But I had to walk into a lot of brick walls. I'm stubborn, very sure of myself. I have a large ego, and it's caused me a lot of pain. So I just wish I would have had like someone in my life like Peter or me earlier to just kind of slap me and be like, hey, it's you, dummy. It's you. You're the problem. It's not, you don't have the wrong people. It's not all this crap that you're saying out loud. It's actually just you. Change yourself. And you can hear that to your blue in the face, but sometimes you just need to go through pain. And I just needed a healthy dose of pain, maybe a decade of it, to actually wake up and say, okay, I've got to change.
There's a lot of dentists that own dental practices, but there's not a lot of dentists that are true business owners. And I think that's, basically what you guys were trying to say. And I think what it comes down to, as we're talking about, is juice worth the squeeze. Like, for an associate, I have associates that make over $500,000 a year working 4 days a week as an associate dentist, as a GP. I mean, like, you can make incredible money as an associate dentist with no management responsibility, no liability, no headaches. So like, when does it become worth it to be an entrepreneur? And I think the thing is, if you're going to buy a practice, like, you have to be all in, and you have to almost have a plan where you're not going to be a full-time dentist. You're not going to be a full-time clinician. It's like the E-Myth. I mean, as you just said, you can't work full-time in patients' mouths, but also devote enough time to running your business and growing your business and watching your KPIs and, making sure the bottom line's growing with the top line and all those things. So I think, like, if you're the type of dentist that just loves clinical dentistry and you want to work 5 days a week, not that you can't be successful owning a practice, but I would almost argue you're better off finding a great opportunity as an associate dentist somewhere than you are buying a practice at that point. So
I love what you just said. I want to add to it. That year I made 100 grand EBITDA. I had associates working for me that were making 500, 600, and 700 grand. So I'm the one at 5 o'clock where my day just begins, and their day was ending at 5, and they're making 6 and 7 times what I'm making. So really the way to know is, if at the end, the final chapter, did you get to the point where, like Peter always says, like, you'd love my life today, but you'd hate my life the last 20, 10, 15 years, whatever. So I think a lot of people are going into this endeavor thinking, I'm a real badass business person, when really all they really are, and it's not taking anything away from them, they're an amazing, iconic dentist. They're really good at their craft. They do $1.5 or $2 million a year with their own hands. They work 3 days a week. They have a cushy life. They have a great balance of their time, but they convince themselves, because they hire a consultant, that I should just open up 2 and 3 and 4 more offices. And it's just, that's when the shit show really begins.
I want to disagree with you a little bit on this, because I think you can do it all. Meaning, you said you can't be a full-time dentist and grow your business. You have to kind of titrate down in days and do. And I don't think that that's the case. I think you can do it all, but guess what? You're not going to be a good golfer. You're not going to be a good friend. You're not going to have a great social life, because Friday, Saturday, Sunday are still work days.
And your kids, let's talk about that. For the female entrepreneurs, for the female entrepreneurs out there, you're not, and you have 3 kids and you're trying to grow a big enterprise, you're going to miss a lot of that child time, which is so damn precious.
Totally. So it's doable, but it's like, choose your hard, right? Like, which hard do you want,
Yeah. The cost of anything is the amount of life you're willing to trade for it.
I think there's seasons in life. So I think, to your point, Peter, if you're like early on in my startup journey, I was that full-time dentist. I was the office manager. I was the business owner. I didn't have any kids at that point in time. And I was working seriously, 80 plus hours a week, 7 days a week. I was working in or on the business, and we grew quickly. But could I sustain that pace, for the next 5 to 10 years? There's no way.
It's like Naval Ravikant says, Craig and I, kind of make a study of him a lot, and, and he has kind of 4 phases of your life if you want to be an entrepreneur, like kind of like a leopard, right? You're going to sprint, you're going to rest. I'm sorry, you're going to train, kind of what you do, like the 8-hour week. You're going to sprint for those 5 years in which you did, Andrew. You're going to rest, and then you're going to reassess, and then you're going to kind of go back. But you're right. There are phases. You can't just stay in a sprint for 15 years and expect that things are going to go well. You have to recalibrate and readjust. And like Craig's saying, you have to readjust your family time or your social time. You have to kind of reestablish balance, or else you just become a robot. And like, what's the point of that?
I mean, I do think there's another option. If you get through that hustle phase and you realize you love clinical dentistry and you're just a badass producer, I think you can keep growing, but you need to hire talent around you. And I'm not talking about that average 50K, office manager. I'm talking like
CEO.
Real talent. Yeah. COO, CEO. I mean, that's what I am now. I'm the CEO of my group, like how you guys, I know, transitioned your group with Drew and stuff. So I backed out of the chair. I run, the big picture, vision, systems, growth, And I have a COO that runs the day to day, and we have a regional manager. So it's like, you do need to create talent around you, especially even at a smaller group, 1 or 2 locations. If you're still full-time clinical, you need to have that talent around you to support you, I think, if you're not going to do it.
Andrew, like, you are uniquely suited versus like a lot of people, they want to copy and paste this narrative that they've heard they should do. And it's not in their heart. So they feel like they're being pushed towards the goal. Whereas you felt like you were probably being gravitationally pulled towards the goal. And Craig and I see this a lot. We've coached over 200 dentists now in a yearly curriculum, very, very intimately. And we see it time and time again. It's just a rare case where someone is locked in on an authentic vision of what they really want versus what someone told them they should do, whether it was a spouse or the internet or Instagram or something else.
And the fellow dentist is overhyping himself to his buddy because that's his need.
What do we do when we go to a dental conference, for example? Like, this is just an example. Like, what are the questions that you get asked, Andrew? Like, hey, tell me about your practice. How many, and it's like similar questions, like how many locations and how many new patients do you get? What are you doing in collections? It's like the 3 things that mean really nothing, right? It's the wrong questions, but yet we want to go around and peacock like Craig, like Craig said, like he had an 8-line top, but no one said, hey, what is your net profit? What's your EBITDA? What's your free time look like? Blah, blah, blah. No one's asking that stuff.
Well, I don't think anyone asks, are you happy with the path that you're on? I think that's an important question we could be asking each other. Like, hey, you're doing this. Like, are you happy doing this?
Well, that's what we say is our master KPI, Andrew. We have this whole curriculum of like stuff that we go through in our mastermind. And I'm not selling a mastermind, I'm just showing, but like at the end, the final push, you can't see it here, is called fulfillment. And it's like, it's the master KPI, because marketing and conversions and treatment acceptance and all this shit doesn't matter if you're not happy.
From my point of view, you guys don't know a lot about me. I've had 3 serious near-death experiences in the military. And one thing I learned really fast was time is everything and quality of life is everything, right? I think these guys get stuck on the path and humans become accustomed to misery, right? They get comfortable in misery and they feel like this is the way it has to be. And they are comparing themselves to their other fellow dentists. I had a dentist who was in Salt Lake City. He was doing massive numbers per operatory, but his buddy was doing more overall collections, so had twice the amount of operatories. And he was taking advice from this guy who was in a completely different market. And I'm like, hey man, he's doing like a lot more collections with double the operatories, but your average per operatory is way higher and you're happier than he probably is. And he's in a different market. You should really be filtering who you're listening to. So you go to these events, and some guy who's also at the event says, well, I'm doing 3 million a year and you're doing 1 million. Call me sometime and I'll tell you how to do it. But that guy's in Nebraska and you're in Miami.
Yeah, I call that metric dysphoria, where you judge your life by the metrics. We have somebody in our mastermind right now who's like, I want to be more efficient. I'm like, what does that mean? I want to get my profit from here to here. I'm like, would you care if your profit's 25% and you net 300 grand a year? Or would you prefer your profit to be 20% and net 1.5 million? I was like, no, I want the profit. I'm like, so why do you care about your efficiency? Just get more butts in the chair.
There's a metric confusion too, where docs focus on, quantity of new patients a month and not necessarily average patient value of new patients a month. And are they getting all the work done?
Or net growth too. Net growth is the other one with dental intel.
Yeah, it's one thing we focus on heavy, right? So it's like for a doc that's like listening to the wrong people, or how does a doc identify? Like what should when they're talking to that individual at a dental event, and for lack of a better word, you said a curse word, so I will. The dick measuring context starts happening where he's starting to measure himself in his head against his buddy. How should he be thinking about that conversation to know what he should be dropping and not listening to, or how should he value that individual compared to himself as far as a source of knowledge?
People just don't have, it's so hard to ask, like, hey, what do you think? And it's like the context matters. Like, you don't have enough context to make the decision, because to your point, Matt, like different market, different scope, different leaders, different personality index kind of thing, like a different leader.
That's the first month of our mastermind. So we happen to be in the first month of our curriculum, and the first month starts with me.
Well, not Craig. It starts with the concept of
Craig, the mastermind's about you.
No. Sorry. Thanks for the clarification. It starts with me as a section, meaning what it is for you. So it's not about me. It's what it is for you. So it's called me, but it's about you. I think I just confused everybody there. But what we're doing during this first month is actually the unlearning process. So I'll just call out an example. two docs married together, and they say they want to join the mastermind. So one of the spouses is like, we want the same thing. I'm like, great. I want to talk to you, each of you individually. One spouse, what do you want? $50 million in gross sales, X number of operatories, multi-location, multi-state. And then the other one, what do you want? I want to work 2 days a week and be with the kids. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be fun. Like, geez, if anybody's going to get marriage counseling, it's going to be me, not you. I need it more. I could use it myself, but it's like, we have to unlearn what they've been told. I'm like, who told you this stuff? Or someone wants to scale and they were told to drop the PPO. So they're a single doctor. They have 10 chairs and they want to add doctors. What do they do? Before they add the doctor, they drop all PPO. So you literally shut the faucet off the front door, like versus like add the doctors, get them busy, then drop the PPO. Because if you go to, I won't name names, there's a consultant out there that just says hiring associates is the worst idea ever. You're going to wind up redoing all the work. Just go off of insurance. But that's great for like, someone who loves clinical dentistry. But if your back is hurting and you're 36 years old and you can't see a future, we got to help that guy too, or that girl too.
We call it like the peanut gallery. It's like you're just listening to advice from the peanut gallery. And I think it goes back to what we said at the beginning of the episode is like, you need to find somebody whose path, not just the results, not like, okay, their top line is this, or they're driving this kind of car, they have this kind of house, but their actual pathway, the type of office they have, the type of dentistry they're doing, the type of role they have in the group, like that is a pathway you think you'd be happy on, and then follow that advice. Don't follow the advice of just, some random consultant who tells you, I mean, when I was doing startups, I was told, don't hire a hygienist, don't hire a hygienist from day one. And I had to have a call with my lender. They have like Wells Fargo had a consultant. That was my lender for my first practice. And the consultant basically told me, so you shouldn't hire a hygienist. You shouldn't do this. You should, you should only be open 2 days a week. You've got to, whatever it was. And like, basically I told him, I was like, listen, I appreciate the advice. I'm not going to follow any of it. I'm letting you know, like I'm hiring a hygienist from day one. I can't afford not to hire a hygienist. And that was a bit, why would I bottleneck the own growth of my practice by doing all the hygiene myself when I don't have time to do the big ticket dentistry? So it's just like, again, you got to be really, really careful who you listen to. And like, that really drives me crazy in some of these dental Facebook groups when I see dentists who, I mean, and they're successful in their own right. Like they're happy with what they're doing. But like, one dentist comes to mind in particular who, does these lean and mean startups, and, they're in a very rural area, and they're basically out there telling this startup dental community, don't spend money on marketing. It's a waste. Like you only need to spend $500 a month on marketing your new startup practice. Look at what I did. And first of all, like totally different situation than most other dentists. But second of all, even a success within his own right, he's happy doing $80,000 a month top line. And I think there's a lot of young dentists who probably want to do a lot more than that. So I think it's, again, there's no one right answer, and just be really careful who you're listening to out there.
You know what? Unfortunately, by the way, guys, I just want to say this. People are just, I'm astounded how intellectually lazy many people are. They don't want to spend the time thinking about what they want. And I know this is a cliche that people spend more time planning their vacation than planning out their lives, but it is amazing how many people come and say, I want what you and Pete have. I'm like, first of all, Pete and I have different things. So do you want Pete has, or do you want what I have? Well, and then you decipher it all down like, wow, you don't want anything like what we have. So let's just focus on what's going to make you happy. And it is such a difficult thing for people to ponder. What do I want? What do I want to create? So out of an intellectual, it being intellectually lazy, you're like, let me just go to Joe Blow, and Joe Blow will teach me the cookbook. And then they wind up doing it, and they wind up being really unhappy. And unfortunately, we see it, Bulletproof. There's a lot of people that are well into their 40s and later, and they're like, damn it, I built everything I was told to build, and I hate my life. And that's the ultimate failure.
I'll have what he's having mentality, rather than thinking for yourself, just give me what he's got.
What we see time and time again, and Craig and I went through this, guys, and we've been coining this like the lost decade. It's like dentists lose at least 10 years of their life just because they're following something. They got out of school and they started sprinting towards something, and they're running and running. And then they realize like, oh shit, this isn't what I wanted. And it's like this lost decade before they've actually before they sit down in their mid 30s or 40s and be like, what do I really want out of this life? I get one trip around. I get one ride on this. What do I really want? And, and we both had this kind of lost decade a little bit. Right. And so like the whole thesis of why we have Bulletproof is like, hey, avoid some of these landmines and do some of the things that we didn't do kind of thing. Or, and it's, I don't know. I wanted to emphasize like the lost decade in that because you see it time and time again, almost without fail with everyone. And Andrew, you can probably like attest to that. I mean, you've been out, I guess, roughly 10 years. Maybe you don't have a lost decade because you were clear on your objectives, but like there was probably some time in there. You're like, I was just kind of going through the motions there.
Well, I mean, even with the group, since we start about 4.5 years ago, I opened the first practice, but things that I was doing at the beginning, things I know now, I'm like, man, if I would have known this 4.5 years ago, we could be so. It's like, unfortunately, you're always going to compare where you could be if you knew something back then.
So I contend like a local, like there's a lot of dentists in study club, and I think people are getting advice in things like that, right? They're getting advice from their neighbor dentist, maybe down the street, or kind of the random at a conference, like, hey, what are you doing? Let's compare notes kind of thing. And I think inherently, like study clubs are great for learning, like how to do stuff, maybe a procedure, and the dentist will help you out to the point that as long as you don't do better than me kind of thing. Right. I always say that like a dental firing squad is a circle, unfortunately. And in, maybe locally, not nationally, it's been far different, meaning we see, because we have people in groups, we see like this authentic, I want you to win, but they're geographically separated by hundreds of miles kind of thing.
You're going to become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so if you're surrounding yourself with just the average dentist in your area, that's probably where you're going to end up. So I think finding mastermind groups, whether it's a mastermind like what you guys have with Bulletproof, I'm in the DSI with Costas, but like some of my best friends I've made since dental school are dentists in these mastermind groups that share similar philosophy, and they're ambitious. And, they're always, every time you come and you hear about someone's new project or new office or new building, again, it's rather than beating you down, it inspires you. It keeps you hungry. And I think those are the people you want to surround yourself with.
Well, a lot of Craig and I mutual success is predicated on us finding each other in 2016. Right? Like this steel sharpens steel kind of thing. Like I was like, hey, have you tried this? No, I haven't tried this. And, and I knew he wanted me to win. Right. And he knew I wanted him to win. So it's like, you gotta have that accountability partner. You gotta have that person cheering for you authentically. And dentistry, I think, is a very, very lonely place, very, very lonely place. And, I won't go there with this industry, but we see it a lot. In this isolation, this working in solitude kind of thing.
Going back to the cookbook analogy, sometimes like, I'm not the greatest cook, and someone hands you a recipe and you don't even have the skills to execute the recipe, let alone it shouldn't be the right one for you. Right. So sometimes it's kind of handed to you like, oh, I can do that, but you haven't developed the skills. And going back to like knowing what you want, a lot of times too, like you said, docs are intellectual lazy. They don't really know what they want. And really going back to the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, once you figure it out, the thing you spend your time on mentally ends up being the thing you want and that you're really focused on that actually comes to fruition, right? And docs just want to go to somebody and say, hey, I spent all this time with my kids to do other stuff. Can you just tell me how to do this to make my practice successful? And there really isn't a silver bullet. It just isn't. It doesn't work that way.
Hey, I have a question for you guys because there's a pretty good breadth of experience between the group of us. Would you say that the people who are most upset, most lonely, most upset, are they the struggling dental business owners or the associate?
Oh, the business owners, 100%.
For me too.
I would say the business owners.
Yeah. So then if we're just going to be like, just kind of honest with everybody, you got to really carefully think, getting back to the title of the podcast, you really have to carefully think, do you want to go through this path and why do you want it? So if the why is like, okay, I just want to grunt my way through this and I'm just going to kind of with grit and I'm going to get to 10 practices, I'm going to sell to a DSO, and then I'm going to live my life. I'm going to live my best life at that point. Is the juice worth the squeeze at that point?
I think that you've got to really think about, why you want to be a business owner. And it's not just, I want to make this much money. I think it's got to be like, for me, it was, I couldn't see myself working for somebody else my whole career. Like that was my why, is like, I knew that I had that entrepreneurial itch where I would rather take the hard of dealing with all this crap, the HR stuff, the lawsuits, the, empty chairs, the marketing, whatever else.
Sleepless nights, the cost on your family.
But I'd rather have that hard than the hard of feeling like I had to follow in someone else's footsteps, or I had to make somebody else's, someone else rich, or I had like that was the lesser evil to me, was to take that on. But like, if that's not your mindset, like if you don't feel that way, I don't think a good reason to go be a practice owner is because you think you're going to make more money. I think that's a bad reason to go be a practice.
I would love to know Peter and Craig's opinion on this. I think docs feel like the next progression in their career has to be practice ownership. Like it's like a preset expectation. Like you're not a black belt dentist unless you own a practice. Like that's it. And also, I feel like the docs that I encounter docs every day. Like we Energize onboards 50 practices a month. And I'll talk to docs that are doing under 70K a month, and they want to blame the market, the patients, everything else but themselves. And I feel like there's an internal frustration there of blaming things you don't have control over. And that creates a level of like revolving misery for that doc that's already underperforming. And I think it's very critical for doc to realize if your business is underperforming, chairs and fixtures and logos aren't successful. People are successful, right? So you have to own that on some level. You have to be able to say, the reason why my business is doing X is me, and how do I change? And if you find yourself, Dennis, if you find yourself blaming all these external things for your lack of success, understand you're not focusing on the right thing. It should be you. How often do you guys encounter that? What advice do you give to a doc that's in that scenario?
That's the most frequent symptom of early failure. So that's the that's the first presenting symptom of failure is it's everyone's fault. Like a finger paint, it's like when you point the finger, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. The more you blame, the higher the likelihood you're going to fail. Bar none. I just think that's what happens. But getting back to the point, when we look at the P&Ls of these doctors and we really distill down the entrepreneurial profit, meaning what does your business make outside of like what you do, there's nothing, or in fact, it's negative. And if my chapter would have stopped at, let's just say, when I did the $8 million top line and a $100,000 profit, let's just say I said, screw this. I'm 43 years old. I've been at this a long time. I just can't make it. I would have sold. My story is like, holy hell, business ownership absolutely sucks. It was the worst thing I ever did. Because when I was making 100 grand at that point, I was doing about 2 million with my own hands. If I would have just said to Peter, hey, I'll move to Atlanta, can you pay me 32% of 2 million? It would be cushy. So I just, we just went through the pain. But I honestly think the biggest problem in dentistry right now is the narrative is so strong from the banks, from the supply houses, from the dental gurus that you see on Instagram that are saying dentists should be a CEO, that we're pushing en masse dentists into business ownership that should have never been in there in the first place. And the funny thing is the DSO is going to save us. Because the DSO will take the person who's like, I got 3 offices, I'm absolutely freaking miserable, and provide them a great opportunity with potential stock ownership and give them the money. And at 501, they're there with their families. Hallelujah. It's amazing. And they're going to make 400 or 500 grand a year and maybe get a piece of some sort of DSO stock. And they'll do better than if they had that 4-chair practice.
I feel like in dentistry, there is that narrative that DSOs are this, big, bad, evil being. But honestly, I think for a lot of dentists, they are going to save them because, if you are in that situation, what else were you going to do? I mean, it's not very easy to sell a multi-practice group, especially if it's, only doing okay, but those DSOs will come scoop them up. So I think they do. I think they have a place in dentistry. And I think that for some dentists, they are actually a really great resource. So.
Well, let's just take the average. The average person that becomes a dental business owner owns like 4 chairs, right? That's the average. It's 4 chairs. Let's call it 60, 70 grand a month. The 4-chair practice doesn't have the opportunity to have entrepreneurial profit. You occupy 2, your hygienist, it's just, there's nothing. You just built yourself a bespoke job. And if you're married and your spouse is doing really well and you just want your own dental boutique and you want the walls the certain color and you want your ADEC this or your Midmark that or whatever you want, a really boutique thing, perfect. But just know you're building yourself a bespoke job. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you're a fly fisherman and you want to buy a $5,000 fly fishing bench, that's cool. Have it your way, but don't fool yourself and say, I'm a dental business owner. You just design a really nice, cushy job, and there's nothing wrong with that. I go into craftsmen's workshops all the time, and it's set up so perfectly. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. You must love it.
So I was going to say, guys, we're starting to get a little low on time. I did want to cover one more thing. So burnout in dentistry is a hot topic, and whatever burnout actually means, or whatever it is, I think there are a lot of dentists that are struggling. Whether it is struggling with frustration with dentistry, with dealing with employees, whether it is just lack of time, whether it is they feel like they're not making enough money to really cover their dental school loans or practice loans, pay for their mortgage, save up some money. I think there are a lot of challenges facing a lot of dentists. Like, what is some advice of something or some things that either you have done or that you have seen work well for other dentists that were going through some tough periods?
I think burnout happens from lack of progress, and lack of progress happens from lack of clarity. So you didn't have clarity. You didn't know what you wanted to create. You started down some sort of pathway. You're doing it. You're not getting the results you wanted because you never really had clarity on what it is you wanted to achieve. So if you're in burnout, go back to the original reasons. Why did you become a dentist? Chances are it's because you wanted to help people, right? Some of us got into dentistry because we wanted to be really, really rich. It's hard. It's going to be a hard path, but most of us got in because we just wanted to help people. So focus on serving people. I think when you want to get whatever you want to get out of life, you have to give it away first. So if your burnout's lack of appreciation, lack of love, lack of leadership, just give appreciation. That's a really quick hack. If you feel like no one cares, you feel like you're underappreciated, just pick up your phone right now and text 2 or 3 people that are in your life and tell them how much you appreciate them. That's like the magic cure and get you really kind of refocused pretty quickly. Whatever you want to get, you give first. That would be my bit of advice if that's where you're at.
And my advice would be, and I think we've all gone through this at some point as dentists, is that we feel like we suffer in silence a lot, right? And it reaches this tipping point where you start looking at, Craig says, our industry leads in kind of depression and suicide and divorce and like all these things, right? And so we suffer in silence because we're leading teams and we can't show vulnerability, and we can't go home and show vulnerability to our wife or our spouse. And so you have to be this perfect specimen. Meanwhile, you have people coming and being like, I hate you, and I hate going to the dentist, and I hate this. So you're the sponge for all of the things. Like, I have to be perfect, and people tell me they don't like me, and then I have to go home and blah, blah, blah. And then we suffer in silence. And then we start turning to things that kind of mitigate that, whether it's, whatever, right? I mentioned all the things. So I think like Greg said, a good antidote, is to give it out. Of course, that's great. It's hard for some people. The other antidote would be to just find someone, right? An accountability partner that will understand the context of what you're going through, right? Your office manager won't understand the context of what you're going through. Your friend across the nation might, but it's, do you have the time for each other? Have you guys set up a support system? My point is just find a way to get out of that lone wolf status and get into kind of like out of solitude a little bit, and find a group that authentically wants you to win, where you can share your vulnerabilities and then maybe some actions out of that.
I think loneliness is a big part of it for sure. So, I guess what I was kind of getting at here too is, even when things look good on the KPIs, even when things look good on the P&L, even when the group's growing, when revenue's growing, when profits are growing, I think we've all been through some times where we feel that way. I mean, at least I know I certainly have. And I think some of the biggest things that have helped me, one was I sat down and I wrote out the things that drained my energy the most. And right near the top of the list was I was monitoring all the Google reviews coming in for all of our practices. Every single time a 1-star review would come in, it would send me into my blood pressure would rise.
You should probably quit. And just pack it up at that point, right?
Yes. Yep. So that was the first thing I offloaded. So we created an SOP. All of our office managers are responsible for their own Google reviews. I don't even look at them anymore. My regional manager makes sure that they're actually being handled appropriately. Since doing that, I feel like stress, frustration, blood pressure has all gone down substantially. But I did that repeatedly with other tasks. That was just, I think, the first thing that came off the list. Another big thing for me, I realized I was spending too much time on my phone. So, a lot of our marketing is on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I'm always on there. I'm scrolling on X. I'm, whatever it is. And I would do that, late at night, and I would feel like I couldn't turn my brain off. And then it was just constant cycle of all the crap going on in my day. So I started plugging my phone in on my charger when I called it quits for the day. So 6 p.m., 6:30, whatever it was.
Good for you.
If I needed to go check something, I would go do it, but I wouldn't sit there on the couch on my phone, and I could actually be more present with my family. I think the third thing I did that really made a difference was I was very intentional about protecting my time for things that really did give me energy. So like my morning routine, I went and got a cold plunge and a sauna for the house. So now I can, start my mornings. I go to the gym, I come home, I do the cold plunge, I get in the sauna, and I feel like it starts my day on the right foot. And there was a long period of time where I had gotten away completely from my morning routines, and I would just start right into the madness. So I think if you can do some of those things, if you can offload things that are taking energy away from you, if you can protect your time for things that give you energy, and honestly, guys, just like cutting out phone time, social media, doom scrolling, whatever we want to call it, those have been really impactful for me.
But you were super intentional, right? Like just the audit alone of auditing your life. Like, here's what gives me energy. Here's what takes away. Like that's a next level thing that people just spend their whole lives not doing. And so like, that's why you're getting exceptional results, is because your inputs are equaling your outputs, kind of thing. So
we've got to do it though. Like you've got to put yourself first. I think we're so focused on our business that sometimes we forget about, putting on our life preserver or whatever. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you both for being here. This was an awesome episode. For our listeners, again, this was one of my favorite podcasts. If you haven't checked out Bulletproof Dental, make sure to check them out. I also went to their annual summit recently, a month or so ago. I brought my CFO, my COO. We learned a lot. So, Peter and Craig, I think they're a depth of knowledge, both things that they did well and mistakes they learned along the way. I think they can save you guys a lot of time. So definitely check them out.
Yeah, so we have wrap up here. One thing with those narratives we were talking about, and when it's a supply company, a coach, somebody pushing these narratives, a bank, just think about the motivations for the narratives, because in the end, it's about selling a product to you, and they're trying to lead you to that conclusion. Me being a support person that sells a service in the industry, I try not to be that way, but whenever these narratives are being pushed, in your head go, what is the outcome they're trying to get out of me for how much they want me to buy? All right. So I want to end it on that, guys. Thank you both, Craig and Peter, for coming today. You guys are awesome, and everyone have a great day.